Good morning, classmates. Good morning, teacher.
Hello.
Today we're going to present about the picture of Dorian Grey by Oscar Wilde. And you know us. So we're going to start with the summary. Okay. So in the breathtaking London, Basil Hallward meets Dorian Grey. Dorian Grey was a young man, a cultured young man, wealthy and of incredible beauty, and he captures the artistic imagination of Basil Hallward, who was a famous painter at that time. Basil Hallward often depicts Dorian Grey as a Greek hero or a mythological figure. That means that somebody to be worshipped or to be admired just because of his beautiful appearance, okay, his beautiful physical appearance. That is the reason of why Dorian Grey seeks for various portraits that Basil has made. But the open place when Basil was painting the last portrait of Dorian Grey, and he was disappointed with this last piece of work. Because it was just as Dorian Grey was at the time. He didn't change anything. He often changed, for example, the clothes that of Dorian Grey in the portraits, or he added some elements from the Romanticism. But in his last piece of work, he didn't change anything. It was just like Dorian Grey was. Sorry. So he was kind of disappointed with this piece of work, and a friend of him, Lord Henry, was at the studio, and he was very good at speaking, very good at convincing people, and often he scandalizes people with, for example, celebrating the beauty and also the youth. And he disagrees with Basil, stating that this last piece of work was his masterpiece, a masterpiece of modern art. And he says to him that he wants to own it. And that's when Dorian Grey comes into the studio, and Basil reluctantly introduces Lord Henry to Mr. Grey, because he was afraid of Lord Henry to influence Dorian in a negative way, because you have to remember that he is very good at convincing people, and he was a pleasure seeker. So he was afraid of Lord Henry to influence Dorian Grey. And then Lord Henry have a little chat with Dorian, and with this little chat about how females is the youth and the beauty, these elements that Dorian Grey possesses, he gets angry, and when he sees the portrait, he pledges his soul in order to the portrait to grow older and dreadful instead of him.
Okay, after that friendship between Dorian Grey and Lord Henry becomes stronger and stronger, Dorian Grey, meets a girl and falls in love with this girl who was an actress. And he particularly fell in love because of the sense of love that this actress could perform in theater. But eventually they have a sort of a struggle, and because after meeting actually love, she wasn't able to perform that on the stage eventually, and she commits suicide, and it is Lord Henry, who tells Dorian Gray that this girl has committed suicide. So that is a very strong episode for Dorian Gray's life, which in turn will lead to bad and worse decisions.
Okay, so continuing with the story, Lord Henry, when Sibyl, the woman Dorian fell in love with, died, Henry told Dorian that this was an amazing life experience for him, meaning that basically that the girl died for him. It was that because she was so in love, and basically he told him that with that, his youth and beauty, he could get anything that he wanted in life. So then when the girl died, Lord Henry gave Dorian a book, a yellow book, which Dorian based his life on it. The book was unknown in the book itself, but the topic of the book was a man seeking pleasure in life. So Dorian based his life on it, and then he started living a life of sin and pleasure. He basically knew that as he was young and beautiful, he could get anything in life. So as he commits sins and he even get more pleasures and different experiences, the picture grows old and ugly, and it starts to rot, basically because it is Dorian's soul. So as Dorian remains young and beautiful, he basically thinks he owns the world. Then the years pass by, and Basil comes to talk to Dorian because he wanted to get his picture back. He knew that his picture was a masterpiece, so he wanted to get it back from Dorian. But as the picture was so ugly and horrible, Dorian didn't want to give it back, and they have like a little argument. And then Dorian tells him that he's going to show him the picture, and when Basil sees it, the picture is of course horrible, and Basil realizes that this has something to do with the devil. So he basically pledges to destroy it, but Dorian stops him by killing him. And then Dorian basically at the end of the story redeems himself by destroying the picture, and then Dorian was found dead as an ugly, horrible man, and the picture was found beautiful and young as when Basil first painted it, like probably 18 years 18 to 20 years from this age.
Okay, now we have Oscar Wilde, but a little bit of Oscar Wilde. He was born on October 16. He was homosexual. That's why he portrayed this sense of homosexuality in the way that Lord Henry and Dorian Gray had their friendship. Okay, and actually he had a struggle with his father-in-law because by that time being homosexual was a sort of crime.
He was a popular literary figure in the late Victorian England, and his only novel was The Picture of Dorian Gray. But he also had many known tales and stories that we all have known or have read at some point of our lives, like The Nightingale and the Rose, which is a really beautiful story, The Selfish Giant, and The Happy Prince. He was married to Constance Lloyd in 1884, and they had 2 children. But later on, it was found out that Dorian was having an affair with a young poet. The father of this poet actually sued Oscar Wilde for being homosexual, but Oscar Oscar fought back to him because he, of course, knew the consequences of being homosexual at that time. But he ended up losing the fight, and he was imprisoned for about 2 years for the homosexual cause. And then he died a few years after he was freed in 1900. And then in the historical context, mainly on our story are three main aspects that we should mention, that are social classes. In this story, social classes don't mix. So we have the aristocracy, the middle class, and the lower class. Dorian was from the aristocracy, basically, and the girl he falls in love with is from the lower class. She was poor and worked in a neighborhood where only like lower class people used to go, or where there were bars with prostitutes and stuff like that. And then we have gender roles, and this is basically most of the time for women that had like more rules to again rule their life, because men were only expected to be wealthy and young and beautiful. The rest was easy. And then for the girls, they were expected not to know too much, because nobody wanted to marry a woman that read too much, that got into discussions about politics and stuff like that, and that wanted to know basically more that they should know, because women at that time were expected to be educated, but in different things, like you have to know how to dance, you have to know how to speak, how to stand up correctly, how to be pretty, and have good manners, I think. And yeah, women also at that time wore those huge dresses that had like a kind of like a bird cage under, and those dresses were actually designed to restrict a woman from some specific things. Like women in those dresses couldn't perform house chores and stuff like that, or they also didn't fit in buses or trains. So it basically restricted them from going anywhere, because their dresses were so big they didn't fit anywhere. And then we have art for moral purposes. That was the main idea of art in this era, because art was supposed to teach and to have morals and to be everything. Everything had to be correct, which was totally the opposite that Oscar wanted to portray in this story, because art, it's basically art for art's sake. So art did not have any purpose other than being beautiful.
Okay, then we have the characters.
So yes, we have the main character of the story, Dorian Grey. As you know, he was very beautiful, very good-looking man, culture as well, and wealthy. He starts in the play. First he is a man that is kind of innocent in his way of thinking, because he's not aware of these elements he possesses, his beauty and the youth. And after talking with Lord Henry, he raised awareness of these elements, and he starts to live a life full of sin and immoral. He becomes an immoral person. That is the transformation of Dorian Gray in this play. Then we have Sybil Vane, which is the girl that Renato talked about. She is the actress that performs at the local theater in London. She was from the slums, and she fell in love with Dorian, and she committed suicide. She performed love stories in the theater, and she couldn't perform well after falling in love with Dorian because she actually felt real love, so she couldn't fake it. Then we had Lord Henry Wotton, and this character is the most stated one in the play because he doesn't change at all. He remains being a man who enjoys to have pleasure. He celebrates youth, and he encourages Dorian to become a sinner and to live this immoral life. So he remains the same alongside the play.
Okay.
During the whole play.
Here we have Basil Hallward, the painter, who is a friend of the two of us, in this case, Dorian Grey and Henry. But he's reluctant. He denies to accept this new friendship because Henry is a too manipulative person. He's a manipulative person. So he sees evil in Henry. So in this new character is James Vane, the brother of the actress who committed suicide. So he blames Dorian and for her suicide because she fell in love, and this struggle of a brother's love is inside his head. Okay. You have the themes, which is the first one, the purpose of art. In this case, the purpose of art by that time had to be aesthetical purpose, in which it was to decorate the houses, etc. Everything to be huge and colorful to call people's attention. And then we have the youth and beauty.
Yeah, the supremacy of youth and beauty, and that were two concepts that basically ruled the upper class at that time, because everyone knew that you could get everything if you were young and beautiful. That is why basically Henry influences Dorian on living a life of pleasure, because he was young and beautiful, and he knew he could get everything in life basically just by being that. He did not need to be educated or stuff like that, even though he still was. But those were the two main concepts that the book tried to portray, and even though they are the most important through the whole book, at the end Dorian still learns that there is always a price to pay for beauty.
Then we have the superficial nature of society, and this means that society judge people by the appearance, because we can see that in the story Dorian Gray becomes an immoral person, but people never judge him just because he was beautiful, because of his physical appearance. For example, they trust him, and they never judge him. They never doubt about who Dorian Gray was. They never had a doubt.
Now we have the symbols.
The symbols. The opium dens. This is a opium den that was remotely located in London. Even though Dorian had one at his house, he often went to the opium den that was far from his house because it was darker. And this represents the degradation of his soul, because he was realizing the life he was living, a life full of sin, and he often goes to the ocean dens in order to find some peace, to think about the things that he is doing in life.
Now we have James Bain, who is the actress lover. No, the actress brother. In this case, James Bain portrays the sense of revenge that in the book is portrayed as a way of the vengeance. Also will lead you to bad experiences. In this case, Dorian's eventual death and desperation of an old and new friendship as well. So that is basically James Bain's participation in the book.
And then we have the Yellow Book that, as I said before, was a symbol of seeking pleasure in life. Basically, Dorian becomes obsessed with this book and lives all his life according to it. Every word that the book said. He was so obsessed with the book that he bought like 20 copies of it just for him. And he this book also was given by Lord Henry to him, and due to his influence on Dorian, it had a great impact on his life.
So then we have the literary devices, and the first two, for example, he was made to be worshipped. This refers to Dorian Grey, and Dorian's whims are lost to everybody except for himself. They represent an hyperbole because they depict Dorian like somebody like somehow like a god, just because of his external appearance, and there is an exaggeration.
Okay, then we have he becomes an echo of someone else's music. That is is a way of personification. That music, in this case, they replace music by people. So in this case, they are referring to myself, to Henry, who is kind of ringing bells inside Dorian's mind.
And then we have its red and white roses will die for every sin that he committed. A stain will fleck and break its fairness. That this is basically symbolism, and it meant that every time Dorian committed sins or seek pleasure for bad purposes, the portrait of Dorian would get ugly or rotten, or something would change in the appearance of the portrait.
Okay, now we have
Now we're going to have the scene. Okay, we're going to start. You must lend me this basil. I want to learn it. It is perfectly charming.
That entirely depends on how you sit today, Dorian.
But I'm tired of sitting here. I don't want a life-size portrait of myself.
Oh, Dorian, this is Lord Henry Wotton, an old Oxford friend of mine. I have just told him what a capital city you were, but now you have spoiled everything.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't know you had anyone with you.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Grey.
Pleased to meet you as well.
My uncles told me that you are a very benevolent person. I know you are interested in the anthropology. I would like to know why you're into anthropology.
Henry, please, would you mind? I'm trying to finish this. It would be awfully rude of mine if I asked you to go away.
Am I to go, Mr. Grey?
Oh, please don't, Lord Henry. I see that Basil is not in the mood, and I can stand it. Besides, I want you to tell me why I should not go in for philanthropy.
You know, Basil, you don't really mind, do you? You know, I must go. I have arranged a meeting with someone at the Orleans.
You know, Dorian's whims are lost to everybody. So if he wishes, you should stay, Henry.
It's okay.
Please, stay. If Lord Henry goes, I shall go too. You
Hurry!
never open your lips while you're painting, and it's horribly dull to stand on this platform trying to look pleasant. Please tell him to stay.
Hurry! To oblige Dorian and to oblige myself. Please stay.
What about the man at the Orleans?
I'm sure he wouldn't mind you not getting there. You never get anywhere anyways.
Okay, I'm tired of sitting here, Basil. I must go out to the garden. I need fresh air.
But Basil, what is happening to Mr. Dorian?
It's okay, you can go now. But let me finish this up a little bit and don't keep Dorian too long, please, outside.
It's okay. I will go out with you, Mr. Grey. Yes, yes. That's one of the greatest secrets of life, to cure your soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. Shall we go to the shade? Please, Mr. Grey? I think Parker has brought the drinks. We can go inside. I'm very glad to meet you, Mr. Grey.
Yeah, I'm glad now, but I wonder, shall I be glad, or shall I always be glad?
Always. That's a dreadful word. Women tend to use it every time. Besides, that's a meaningless word. You should live your life, Mr. Grey. You have such a beautiful face. You have such a beautiful appearance. You should take advantage of your youth that will eventually be faded. So live the life that you have now. There's nothing to have afraid of.
I'm quite finished. You can come inside because the lighting is perfect. Please bring your drinks.
That's perfect. Mr. Grey, please, come closer.
No, wait, I don't want Dorian to see it.
Why? Why? Do you like it? Do you like it,
Is
Mr.
it of your pleasure, Dorian?
Of course it is of his pleasure. Who wouldn't like it? I would have anything. I would give everything to have it. You're perfect, Mr. Grey. Besides, whose property is it?
Not mine, of course. Dorian's.
Okay, Dorian, you're such a lucky fellow.
How sad it is. How sad it is that this picture will remain young and beautiful forever. and I will grow older, horrid and dreadful. If it was only the other way around, if it was me to remain always beautiful and young, and this picture to grow older and dreadful, I will give everything. Yes, there's nothing in this world I wouldn't give to remain beautiful and youth as this picture. That's the end.
Thank you.
That is correct.
Really beautiful. Questions from...
If you want, you can sit. You don't need to be standing. If you want. Allow the audience to digest.
Do I turn it up or just close the... Close it?
Either, yeah.
Okay.
It's a comment actually. I really like the scene play. Jacqueline, really good drawing. And I liked how Renato portrayed the relationship between the two characters. He was really close to Dorian, and we can notice the tension between the two of us. So it was a wonderful scene. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Well done.
That is actually the scene in which Lord Henry convinces Dorian
Yes.
about his youth and his beauty, so as to live life to the fullest, I'd say.
Do you think Henry?
Yep.
Yeah. Henry's character represents like this before and after Dorian's Gray life. He influences Dorian Gray in forever, you will say? Was it?
I'd say yes, until he becomes aware of what he has been doing in life. Because in the end of the story, he redeems himself by destroying this portrait, and by destroying it, he redeems himself and releases his soul out of the portrait, and he actually grows older and ugly and dreadful, and the picture becomes as beautiful and young as it was originally painted. So he influences his whole life from the moment he met him.
May I add something? Henry actually, even though he doesn't have any changes in personality in the story, he actually does have a change in the way that he influenced in Dorian the life that he was never able to live because he was married. So he basically made Dorian live everything that he wasn't able to live. The only thing that he was free to do was to cheat on his wife, because women at that time, even though they were married, they couldn't say anything to their husbands when they were going to see prostitutes and stuff like that. So basically he did not have any freedom for some things that Dorian was able to do.
And also there is an before and after change in Dorian's personality, because in the book there is a symbol which is the white color, but we couldn't find a white person, so Dorian in the book is white, is with blonde hair and blue eyes. So that is intentional. I mean, but on the author's behalf, because white represents the purity, yes, purity, and the innocence that Dorian's had before having met me. And also, I'd like to add the fact that you have mentioned that Lord Henry is the unique, the only character that does not change his personality, because most of the characters eventually end up dead, or they change their personality. But when myself, I remain the same person, the same bad person. This.
I have a question, a personal question regarding the thing of the physical appearance, and I want to know your opinion about that. If you, why do you think most people or many people think that it is very important to have good physical appearance, like being beauty, as you said? Dorian Gray was pale skin, blonde and blue-eyed. So why do you think these people think that it is so important to have a good physical appearance, even though in the instant you are a good person, you know, maybe in the jobs you are a good worker? What do you think?
Do you mean nowadays?
No, yes, in comparison with the book.
I think that the fact of discriminating people by their appearance is part of history. I mean, the whole history has been looking for people to represent, even to represent themselves historically. I mean, look at the leaders the history has had. Hitler's, all the presidents that they might have an influence. In this case, Lord Henry had a beautiful appearance in the book as well.
Even different cultures have different patterns of beauty.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the physical appearance always is the first thing that people look to. For example, when women want to apply to a job, there's lots of women, and then the beautiful one actually gets a job just because of the appearance, and that happens nowadays. So it is still present, and it comes, as Renata said, from decades ago.
Yes, because you mentioned something very interesting in the book, is that Dorian Gray becomes a sinner and a bad person after meeting Henry, and nobody told him anything because of his appearance. So these are things that sometimes happen now, like people commit, I don't know, crimes or something, and because of their appearance,
They become trustworthy.
yes, so they are forgiven.
Yes.
I kind of agree with what Felipe said, but it is only on some things, because the way we see beauty nowadays, of course, has changed so much since those times, because nowadays we all know that beauty is something that sells. That is why people use beauty as a way of getting things. But as he said, beauty, for example, nowadays is only required like in some jobs. For example, a teacher is not required to be beautiful, and for example, a woman is not required to be beautiful and slim and have perfect hair and stuff like that. But for example, in those car selling events and stuff like that, if you put like a woman that is not as slim, that is kind of chubby and that has like a messy appearance, it's not going to be attractive to the public, so it doesn't sell. And the same way that with beauty in our life, like we know that we seek different things beside beauty, but we still have like an opinion on it. Maybe it's not the most important thing nowadays, but it still counts in some things.
Hedonism, or an hedonist person, is someone who's pleasure-seeking, has a pleasure-seeking attitude. What's your perception about hedonism? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it morally correct?
don't feel that. I'm not into hedonism because that's a concept that I have lived that my whole life. So I personally don't like it because discrimination by physical appearance is not part of me. Because I don't feel that. That's one of the reasons I'm becoming teacher, so as to avoid those situations in which the people struggle or people argue for being more beautiful than others. I don't like also these beauty contests, etc. in which the beauty is awarded and the hedonism. It's okay for some cultures as Felipe mentions, such as Greeks, but nowadays we must accept ourselves the way we are. I mean, it's okay if the only aspect that I mind is that it's what is inside a person.
I don't know if I would call it immoral, but maybe it's wrong on some aspects. But as he mentioned, I think that everyone in life has different special characteristics. So, for example, in a beauty contest, a woman that is beautiful, that works hard to show off her body, and maybe that is her talent. So why don't we use the things that we've got to get the best out of it? For example, I was not made to be in a beauty contest, so that is not my strong.
But hedonism implies that you look for the best food, that you enjoy drinking the best drinks, that you look for anything that causes you pleasure, sex, food, entertaining, drugs, anything, and you live for and by it, right?
In the story, Lord Henry represents hedonism, and it is seen as something bad because it is excessive. But I think that everything in great amounts is bad. I mean, you have to maintain a balance with being moral, immoral. I don't know. All of us have some pleasures that we like or we want, of course. But if you are constantly looking for them, it's bad. It is bad. But if you have a balance and then and if you don't hurt anybody with those pleasures, I think it's okay.
So where's the line when something becomes bad, or why does it
I
become
think
bad?
that it is when you get to hurt somebody by doing what you like or what pleases you.
Yeah, actually, in the book, Dorian asked Henry if there is such a thing as bad influence, and Henry asked him back that all influence is bad. Because it's to give your own soul. I mean, from the very moment I am influenced a person, by that time I am kind of modifying, changing his or her mind. So for my benefit, I don't know. Those are kind of strategies that people tend to use by that time. And also, this is kind of the opposite side of the coin in which the play that we watched yesterday, in which the lower classes. In this case, we have the upper classes, but there is influence as well in both sides. And in our case, it was me. And yesterday we saw the children who are manipulated by worse and even worse people.
Any other questions that you may have, dear audience? Are we good?
I wanted to ask something
Okay.
related to the author Oscar Wilde. I don't know how to read the question. Why do you think, as you mentioned, Oscar Wilde was homosexual, and maybe he wanted to portray this homosexuality theme in the book, like the relationship between Dorian Gray and Henry. But why do you think that Oscar Wilde portrayed this relationship in this kind of story, like a man changing from being innocent, as you said, to being a sinner, to going to I don't know, to bars and drugs, etc. Because there's this relationship, this tension, as Tamara mentioned, with your performance. But why Oscar Wilde wanted to do this, like maybe to portray how people see physical appearance, or to maybe to show people homosexuality as it is? What do you think?
There is actually a theory that says that Dorian Gray may be gay in the story, but it is not clear because he does not perform any homosexual activity in the book. But I think that according to what you said, Dorian, the beauty in the book is portrayed in Dorian being influenced by the compliments that he is given, because basically the artist also compliments Dorian like a lot, because he idealized him and saw him as like a perfect figure, but his compliments were like so shallow that Dorian only saw them as compliments coming from a friend, because he's telling you that you're pretty just because he likes you. But Henry didn't even know Dorian when he actually had some influence on him. So Dorian started to get curious about that, and he saw Henry as like a big figure that knew like everything about beauty and being young, maybe because he did some things when he was young, so he probably based his opinion on Henry's experiences.
Yeah, and the book, when the book was published, was categorized as immoral as well. It was, people were reluctant to read that the book. Actually, the other play that he wrote, it was the importance of being endless. Yeah, that was spoiled by this poet's father, in which there was a night, the release of the book, and was spoiled by this fatherly love. And I think that he portrays his liberty, that his freedom that he had through these two characters. I mean, what if I don't get the person I love, I would get a book that I do love. Okay, so he wrote these lines, and how bad can be to influence a person to deny of having two people who love each other, and how complex it could be.
Maybe it was intended to go against the moral of that time, the Victorian moral, because it was like at its best to be moral and polite. For example, the relationships between men and women, they had to be like very polite, and respectful, and maybe because of his sexuality, he wanted to go against that, and to stand against that, to stand up against that, and maybe that is why he wanted to go to break that morality up, and I see this piece of work like a transition from the Victorian art to modern art.
Well, actually, in the book, there's no, as Francisco said, there is no homosexual activity, but there is a movie, well, there are many movies, but there is a movie from 2009 in which they do kiss each other. So, by that,
Dorian kisses Basil.
yeah. And but I think that nowadays it's not that complicated to watch that on a screen. I mean, who anyone could watch. But by that time it was a sense of immorality for that society.
But in the story, Basil almost worshipped Dorian, and he protected him. He wanted to protect him from Lord Henry. So I think that is kind of love that he felt for him. But even though he doesn't do anything related to I don't know, homosexual things. For example, he doesn't kiss him in the story, but he portrays love.
Maybe as a friend also.
Yes.
Close friend.
From Basil to Dorian.
Thank you for your presentation.